Ethan, open the door. I'm still the woman you loved. Vanessa's voice crashes through the hallway like thunder rolling over Austin rooftops. She's pounding her fist against the door, mascara streaked in black trails down her cheeks. I'm on the other side, leaning against the door, as if my weight alone could keep my world from caving in. My phone screen glows between my fingers, replaying the same damn clip for the 100th time. Vanessa eyes, shining voice, fierce. A man who can't handle a fearless woman isn't a real man. But in her voice now, outside my door, there's fear bleeding into the edges. My name's Ethan Miller, 34 years old, Director of Supply Chain Operations at Titan Retail Logistics. I make good money enough to afford this downtown apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and skyline views that used to feel like a symbol of success. Now they just feel like glass walls keeping me locked in. And outside that door stands Vanessa Brooks, 29, a PR consultant whose laugh used to feel like the sun coming up. The woman who once made me believe that love meant pushing each other to be bigger, braver, bolder. When we met, she was magnetic, the kind of woman who could silence a crowded room just by laughing at the right moment. She wasn't perfect, nobody is, but she made life feel electric. I wish that's the only version of her that existed, because the truth is, Vanessa's not a villain. She's not just hashtags and empowerment slogans. She's someone who's terrified of being ordinary, who spent her entire life trying to prove she's unbreakable, even when she's shattering inside. But in trying so hard to prove how strong she is, she's left scorched earth behind her. And right now she's standing outside my door, trying to convince me that what we had still matters. I hear her voice crack. Ethan, I know I screwed up, but I'm still me. And maybe that's true. Maybe the real problem isn't that Vanessa changed, but that I'm finally seeing all the parts of her I refused to see. The woman who could command a client meeting like a general, but also cried herself to sleep after losing a contract. The woman who called herself fearless, but panicked at the thought of being alone. A year ago, I thought I'd met my forever. Now, I'm standing in my own apartment, heart hammering, knowing that opening that door might mean stepping right back into the chaos I've been trying to escape. Outside, Vanessa sobs again, her voice smaller this time. Please, don't shut me out. And I wish, for one perfect second, that love was simple. But love isn't simple. And sometimes the hardest thing in the world is choosing yourself. Before Vanessa, I used to think life was all about balance, schedules, plans, logistics. I'm Ethan Miller, 34, born in Houston, to a family that ran trucks back and forth across Texas highways. My dad taught me how to check tire pressure before I learned how to drive. My mom believed any problem could be solved with a sturdy filing cabinet and a well-placed sticky note. I carried that philosophy into my life. Steady job, good salary, an apartment that felt more like an investment than a home. I'd been burned once in love already, a 3-year relationship that ended when my ex told me I was suffocating her. So after that, I built walls high enough to keep any chaos out. And then, Vanessa Brooks blew in like a Texas thunderstorm. Vanessa's 29. Grew up in Dallas, only child to a mom who taught English lit and a dad who managed an electronics store. She's the type who can drop Shakespeare quotes at brunch, then laugh so hard at a dirty joke she nearly chokes on her mimosa. When we first met at a logistics networking mixer, she was in the middle of passionately explaining a PR crisis strategy to a room of half-bored execs. Her voice was strong, confident, but there was this flicker in her eyes, like she was daring the world to challenge her. She worked freelance PR gigs, political campaigns, influencer branding, small business launches. Her income was like Texas weather, booming 1 month, bone dry the next. She lived alone in a sleek studio in Midtown walls, covered in whiteboards scrawled with client ideas and half-finished quotes. One night, sitting on my balcony with the city lights below us, she told me, I've built my whole life on proving I don't need anybody, not because I want to be alone, but because needing someone has always felt like giving them the power to leave me behind. And I remember thinking how human that sounded, how honest. But Vanessa's independence wasn't always the calm, healthy kind. Sometimes it was laced with panic, like she was trying to outrun a fear that if she slowed down for even a second, she'd have to admit she was exhausted. I loved her laugh, the way she could flip from serious business talk to goofy dance moves in the space of a breath. She'd surprise me with tickets to underground jazz clubs or talk me into midnight tacos on 6th Street. Life with Vanessa was never boring. By 8 months in, she was practically living at my place. Clothes in my closet, makeup overtaking my bathroom sink. Yet she refused to give up her Midtown lease. A woman's gotta have an escape hatch, Ethan, she'd tease, grinning over her coffee. It was half a joke, half a truth I wasn't ready to look too closely at. Because the thing nobody tells you is, sometimes the people who shine the brightest are the ones terrified that the light might go out. And sometimes, loving them means realizing that no matter how close you get, you'll never completely calm the storms they carry inside. The thing about red flags is they rarely show up waving like warning signals. Most of the time they slip in quietly, disguised as quirks or just how she is. With Vanessa, it started small. She'd disappear for hours with no explanation. I'd come home expecting dinner together, only to find a note scrawled on a post-it. Out networking, don't wait up. At first I admired it. Her hustle, her drive. But there was something else too. A pattern I couldn't ignore. Sometimes she'd come home late smelling like some spicy men's cologne that wasn't mine. I tried to joke about it. Make any $1 million deals tonight. She'd toss her hair and smile. Don't be jealous, Ethan. A girl's gotta build connections. Then there were the texts. Guys I'd never met popping up on her phone. Names like JPR or Lucas Client. Late-night memes, flirty emojis. One night I glanced at her screen and saw a string of laughing faces, followed by, wish you were here. When I asked who he was, she sucked in a sharp breath and glared at me like I'd just accused her of treason. Why are you checking my phone, Ethan? That's controlling. But I hadn't been checking. It was just there, flashing in the dark like a neon sign. Another time we were out grabbing drinks, and some guy leaned in to hug her, whispering in her ear longer than seemed necessary. When he left, I asked, "Old friend." She waved it off. "Relax, he's harmless. I'm allowed to have friends." The way she said it made me feel like I'd just been scolded for daring to care. Vanessa started posting more on social media too. Not just pictures, but loaded captions. A woman who's truly independent doesn't owe explanations to insecure men. Or, never dim your light to make small-minded people comfortable. I'd scroll through those posts at midnight, wondering if I'd become the small-minded man in her story. Once, after another silent treatment over a simple question, I tried to explain how it felt. It's not that I want to control you. I just want to know where you are, that you're safe. Her eyes hardened. I'm not some teenager who needs to check in. If you can't handle how I live my life, maybe you're not ready for me. She always framed it like that, a test of whether I was man enough to handle her brand of freedom. And for a long time, I convinced myself I was, because deep down, I wanted to believe that loving someone meant accepting all of them, even the parts that left me lying awake at night, staring at shadows on the ceiling, wondering who exactly she was texting at 2 in the morning. But slowly, the doubt started eating holes in the walls I'd built around my own boundaries. And each time I swallowed my fear and tried to be the secure man, I felt a little bit more like I was losing myself. Then Adrian Carter came back into town, and everything that had been simmering under the surface with Vanessa finally boiled over. I remember the first time she brought up his name casually over coffee on a Sunday morning. Steam rising between us, sunlight pouring through my apartment windows. "So, guess who's moving back to Austin?" I glanced up half awake. "Ooh, Adrian, my ex." She said it lightly, like she was mentioning an old high school classmate instead of the guy who'd once shared her bed. "Oh, cool, I guess I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. We stayed friends after we broke up, no big deal." I shrugged, because truthfully I wanted to be the kind of man who didn't flinch at the idea of an ex hanging around. But inside, my stomach tightened like a knot pulled too tight. At first it was harmless enough. They grabbed coffee, caught up. She'd come home bubbling with stories. Adrian's working at this big digital agency now. He's running creative for some crazy huge accounts. I'm so proud of him, and maybe I could have handled it if it had stayed at coffee. But it didn't. Adrian's name started showing up in little moments. Vanessa's phone lighting up during dinner. Quick smiles as she typed out replies. One night, I found her laughing into her phone on the balcony. When she came back inside, cheeks flushed, I asked, "Adrian." She raised her eyebrows like I just accused her of robbing a bank. "Why are you so obsessed with Adrian? He's just my friend Ethan." But I could see the change. How she sparkled when she talked about him. How her eyes danced the way they used to dance for me. Then one afternoon, I walked into our bedroom and found her sitting on the edge of the bed, face-pale phone, clutched so tight her knuckles were white. "Everything okay?" I asked. She glanced up, blinking like she'd forgotten I existed. "It's Adrian. He's going through some stuff. He needed someone to talk to." "Vanessa, you're not his therapist. Why do you have to make everything sound so suspicious?" It wasn't just my imagination. Even our friends started noticing. One night we were at a bar with some mutuals when someone cracked a joke. "Yo, Vanessa, does Ethan know you and Adrian basically have joint custody of your calendar now?" Vanessa forced a laugh, but her hand went rigid on her glass. When I tried to talk to her about it later, she cut me off. "If you can't handle me having male friends, then maybe you're not cut out for a woman like me." That sentence echoed in my head for days. Then came the bombshell. It was a random Tuesday night. Vanessa and I were eating takeout on the couch. Out of nowhere, she said, "Hey, so Adrian invited me to this music festival in Houston next weekend." I blinked. "Okay, so we're going." She gave me that look, the one where her eyes turned sharp and glassy all at once. "No, just me. He got the tickets months ago. It's kind of our tradition." A cold weight dropped into my chest. "So, you're going to a festival with your ex, alone, for a weekend. God, Ethan. It's a music festival, not a honeymoon. Why do you always have to turn everything into a crime scene?" I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. Because for the first time, I could see how this story was going to end. No matter what I said, Vanessa was going. And worse, part of me knew she was testing me, waiting to see how far she could push before I finally said, "Enough." But even then, a tiny piece of me still wanted to believe her, wanted to believe love was strong enough to survive old ghosts. I just didn't know that the real ghost wasn't Adrian. It was the part of Vanessa that could never let herself belong completely to anyone. The night Vanessa finally made her choice, the whole world seemed sharper somehow. Colors brighter, sounds clearer, like my senses were bracing for impact. We were at our favorite Italian place, squeezed into a cozy corner booth under strings of warm lights. The smell of garlic and basil hung heavy between us. For a while, we pretended everything was normal, laughing about a clumsy waiter sharing bites of tiramisu. But under the table, my leg wouldn't stop bouncing, because I knew what was coming. Halfway through dinner, Vanessa set her fork down and folded her napkin carefully in her lap. Her voice was soft, too soft. "So, I'm leaving Friday for Houston." I felt my pulse skip. "Okay, work thing." "No, the festival. With Adrian." The way she said his name made it sound harmless, like she was announcing she'd scheduled a dentist appointment. I stared at her, trying to process each word. "Vanessa, you're really going alone with your ex?" She tilted her head, lips pressing into a thin line. "Why are you making this sound like I'm committing a felony?" "It's just a music festival. We've gone every year since college. It's tradition. Our tradition." "You're not in college anymore. You're in a relationship. With me." Her eyes flashed. "Oh my God. Ethan, this is exactly the problem. You act like me having a history with someone else makes me unfaithful. Adrian and I are friends. That's it. Friends who take weekend trips together and stay overnight." She leaned closer, voice dropping. "Are you listening to yourself right now? You're policing where I go, who I see. That's controlling, and I will not be controlled." I tried to keep my voice steady. "This isn't about control. It's about respect, boundaries." Her laugh was bitter, echoing off the brick walls. "No, it's about your insecurity. And I'm not going to sacrifice my friendships because you can't handle your own paranoia." Around us, people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Forks paused midair. A waiter lingered a few feet away, pretending to straighten silverware. I lowered my voice, throat tight. "So you're choosing Adrian over me?" She threw her hands up. "I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing not to live in a cage you're building around me. And if you can't handle that, maybe this isn't the relationship for you." My chest felt like it was caving in. I tried one last time. "Vanessa, please. If you go, I don't know if we can come back from that." She stared at me for a long time, her eyes glassy with something that might have been guilt or defiance, or maybe both. "Then that's your problem, Ethan, not mine." The check landed between us with a quiet thud. Neither of us touched it right away. On the ride home, we sat in silence. Her face turned towards the window city lights, strobing across her skin like flashes from paparazzi cameras. When we pulled up outside my building, she finally spoke. "I hope, while I'm gone, you figure out what kind of man you really want to be." She got out of the car without another word. The next morning, I woke up to see Vanessa's face all over Instagram. A perfect selfie, hair flowing, eyes fierce. The caption read, "A woman who loses herself to keep a man, loses everything." Likes poured in. Comments from her friends filled my feed. "Live your truth, babe. If he can't handle your freedom, he doesn't deserve you. You're a queen." I stared at my phone, thumb trembling, because it wasn't just a festival she was going to. She was going to prove to herself, to her followers, maybe even to me, that she could live without boundaries, without compromise, without me. And deep down, I realized she might be right, but it didn't make the hurt any less sharp. When the door finally shut behind Vanessa that night, the silence in my apartment felt deafening. I stood there in the dark, staring at the spot where she'd just been, my mind spinning like a roulette wheel that refused to stop. All I could hear was her voice echoing in my skull. "I'm choosing myself." At first, I did nothing. I just wandered from room to room, every inch of the apartment reminding me of her. The half-burned candle on the coffee table that smelled like vanilla and cedar. The mug with pink lipstick stains sitting in the sink. Her jackets hanging on the coat hooks as if she'd be back any second to grab them for a night out. But the longer I stood there, the more my chest started to tighten, a knot twisting tighter and tighter until I couldn't breathe. So I started packing. It felt mechanical at first, like I was moving through water. I pulled open drawers, grabbing handfuls of her clothes, silky tops, ripped jeans, workout leggings, still faintly smelling of her coconut shampoo. I folded everything neatly, methodically. Every item I packed away felt like sealing up a piece of a life I'd tried so hard to build. Her makeup filled an entire shoebox, highlighters, lip glosses in a rainbow of colors. Tiny perfume bottles clinked against each other as I set them on top. I kept thinking how she'd laugh and tell me I was being dramatic. "You can't just erase me, Ethan." But I could, and I had to. By the time I finished, her presence had been stripped from every surface. My apartment looked cold, sterile, like a hotel room waiting for a guest who'd never show up. I loaded the boxes into my car and drove to her midtown building. The city lights flickered across the windshield, casting strange patterns on my face. I carried her things up and set them carefully outside her door. Then I wrote a note, my hand shaking so hard the letters wobbled. "Vanessa, you've always said fearless women don't need a man to validate them, so I'm giving you the space you wanted. Your things are safe. I trust you'll handle the rest. Ethan." I slipped it under the top box and walked away. That night, I changed the locks on my apartment. Sunday rolled around like a funeral march. Part of me expected her not to come back at all. But at exactly 8 o'clock, I heard the elevator ding outside my hallway. The knock was soft at first, then harder. Ethan opened the door. I cracked it open. She stood there in her festival gear, denim jacket, boots dusty from Houston. Hair pulled back. Her eyes looked tired, red-rimmed. "Hey, can we just talk?" "We're talking right here." She tried to smile. "Don't do this. We can work through it. No, we can't. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Ethan, I know I hurt you, but this isn't worth throwing everything away. You threw it away the second you chose Adrian over me, and the second you broadcasted my personal life all over Instagram. She blinked fast, tears welling up. The post wasn't about you, Ethan. It was just me venting. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshot. 6 hours after we fought about you going away for the weekend. You really want to stand there and tell me it's a coincidence? She stared at it, and for the first time her bravado cracked. Okay, maybe I was angry, but I didn't mean it like that. I was trying to prove I'm not some weak woman who lets a man control her. And look where that got you. She reached for my hand. I stepped back. Where am I supposed to go? She whispered. Good thing you kept your own place, remember? She tried to laugh, but it broke halfway out, dissolving into a shaky breath. Ethan, I love you. Don't do this. We're good together. Love without respect isn't love. It's chaos. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but she said nothing. I changed the locks. I need you to leave. For a moment she stood, frozen tears streaking down her cheeks. Then she nodded once, like accepting a verdict. She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. As I closed the door, my own breath shuddered out of me, because I knew this wasn't just the end of a relationship. This was me finally choosing peace over proving I could handle a fearless woman who never really wanted to stay. By Monday morning, the story of Ethan and Vanessa wasn't just ours anymore. It belonged to everyone. I showed up at the Titan offices thinking I could bury myself in spreadsheets and shipments. That maybe if I kept my head down, this whole mess would fade into the background. Instead, I barely made it to my desk before a coworker leaned over and whispered, "Man, you okay?" I blinked at him. Why wouldn't I be? He pulled out his phone and tilted the screen toward me, and there she was. Vanessa, sitting on the floor of her midtown apartment, eyes swollen, voice trembling. A live video running nearly 15 minutes long. I never thought the man I loved would try to control me like this. I gave up so much to be with him, and he just threw me out like trash. Because I wouldn't cut ties with my friends. Because I refused to stop living my life. My stomach dropped. I watched the comments scroll by so fast I couldn't read them all. Men are trash. This is why women stay single. You're better off without him, Queen. My name wasn't in the video, but everyone who knew us knew exactly who she was talking about. By lunch, I was getting texts from friends. Dude, what happened? Bro, Vanessa's saying some crazy stuff online. A few were cautiously supportive, others less so. Wow, didn't know you were that guy. I tried not to let it show. Tried to keep my face neutral while I ate a sandwich that tasted like cardboard. But inside, shame was clawing at my chest. Tuesday, things got worse. Vanessa kept posting, not direct accusations, but pointed quotes. A woman who dares to speak her truth is always labeled difficult. Sometimes the person who claims to love you the most is the first to clip your wings. The likes piled up. People I'd never met were chiming in, calling me controlling, toxic, insecure. And yet, a few quiet messages started trickling into my inbox. Friends who'd been there for parts of our relationship. People who'd seen Vanessa's sudden mood swings, her disappearances, the way she'd turn any question into a personal attack. Hey man, I'm not saying you're perfect, but I saw how she talked to you sometimes. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Meanwhile, Vanessa's career took a hit. A boutique fitness brand she'd been working with quietly dropped her name from their website. A tech startup she'd helped launch announced they were taking a different PR direction. People started unfollowing her. Her once booming comment section slowed down. But for every brand that backed away, there were still plenty of strangers eager to cheer her on. Eager to believe her side. Because a crying woman online is a powerful thing. Wednesday, I got called into my boss's office. He shut the door and folded his hands on his desk. Ethan, I'm not asking for details, but your personal life is becoming public, and clients are nosy. Be careful how you handle this. I nodded. Because what else was there to say? Thursday, Vanessa showed up at my office lobby. Security called me downstairs. She looked tired, pale. like the festival glow had burned off her skin. "Ethan, please, can we just talk? This is all getting out of control." I crossed my arms. "You're the one who put it online, Vanessa." I was upset. I was scared. People were messaging me all kinds of horrible things. I just wanted them to know my side. "You made me out to be some monster, and now you're losing clients, and you want me to help fix it. I'll delete the posts. I'll tell people it was a misunderstanding. Please, I can't afford my apartment. I'm getting dropped from contracts left and right." I stared at her. Part of me wanted to reach for her hand. Part of me wanted to scream. "Vanessa, you said you wanted freedom. This is what freedom looks like. Owning your choices." Her eyes welled up. "So you're just going to let me fall apart? You're the one who burned the bridge, not me." She turned away, wiping her face. I thought, if I was strong enough, loud enough, people would believe me, that they'd see I wasn't the villain. I sighed. "You're not the villain. You're just human. But so am I. And I'm done living my life in your highlight reel." Security hovered nearby. She finally took a shaky breath and walked out into the Austin sunlight. And as I watched her go, I realized maybe the worst part wasn't that Vanessa had painted me as the bad guy. It was that for so long, I'd believed I had to prove to her and everyone else that I wasn't. For a couple of days after that showdown in the lobby, I actually started to believe the worst was behind me. Vanessa went silent online. No new posts, no tearful confessions, no cryptic quotes about freedom and toxic men. But with Vanessa, silence never meant peace. It just meant the storm was gathering force somewhere else. Friday morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing before I'd even finished my first coffee. Text after text, calls, Instagram notifications flooding my screen. "Yo, Ethan, have you seen the video? Bro, this is wild. Your ex is trending again." I clicked the link someone sent me. There, it was shaky phone footage posted on a local gossip page. The camera panned across a sea of people at H-Town Live Fest and landed right on Vanessa and Adrian. She was in his arms, laughing so hard her head fell back. And then, they kissed. Not a quick peck, not a friendly hug, a full-on eyes closed, hands in hair kind of kiss. The caption read, "Remember Vanessa Brooks saying she's just friends with her ex? Well." My throat went dry. I scrolled through the comments. So much for controlling boyfriend. Wow, she played herself. Men aren't always the villains. Some comments were still defending her, but a lot weren't. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight of guilt start to shift off my chest. Vanessa had painted me as the bad guy, the controlling boyfriend who tried to cage her independence. But now, the receipts were public. Over the next 48 hours, Vanessa's world seemed to unravel online. A boutique jewelry brand pulled a sponsored post that featured her. An influencer podcast dropped her scheduled guest spot, issuing a polite statement about focusing on positive relationship narratives. Mutual friends started texting me. "Dude, she's freaking out." Vanessa called me sobbing, says she's losing gigs left and right. I wanted to feel smug. Part of me did. But mostly, I just felt tired. Monday, she showed up at my building again. Security buzzed me, and I almost told them to send her away. But curiosity got the better of me. She stood in the lobby looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Hoodie pulled low over her eyes, voice shaking. "Ethan, please, can we talk?" "What's left to talk about, Vanessa?" She swallowed hard. "I messed up." "Okay, the video. It's everywhere. I'm losing clients. I'm getting death threats. People keep calling me a liar. Well, actions have consequences. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Adrian kissed me first. I didn't stop it. Vanessa, you posted for weeks about how I was controlling, and the whole time, this was going on." Her eyes brimmed with tears. I was scared. I thought if people saw me as the woman who went back to a man who tried to control her, they'd think I was weak. I thought, if I doubled down, people would stay on my side. "So you threw me under the bus." She choked out a laugh that sounded like it hurt. I thought I could control the story, But the truth has a way of coming out, doesn't it? I stared at her memories flashing behind my eyes. Her laughter, her hands in mine, the way she used to look at me like I was the only man in any room. What do you want from me, Vanessa? I want us. I want to start over. I closed my eyes. No, I can't do this again. Please, I'll delete the videos. I'll post an apology. I'll tell people you're not the bad guy. It's not about being the bad guy. It's about the fact that I don't trust you anymore. Her shoulders slumped. So that's it. That's it. I thought you were the one person who'd always see the real me. I did, Vanessa, and that's exactly why I have to walk away. She stood there trembling, wiping her cheeks with the sleeve of her hoodie. I'm losing everything. Then maybe it's time you learned that independence doesn't mean hurting everyone who tries to love you. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, then stopped. Finally, she turned and pushed through the glass doors, vanishing into the noise and sunshine outside. And as I watched her go, I felt a strange ache in my chest, because I knew she wasn't just losing her career. She was losing the one person who'd tried so damn hard to believe she was more than her own chaos. In the weeks after Vanessa disappeared through those glass doors, the dust slowly began to settle. The world moved on, the way it always does. Vanessa's social media presence didn't vanish overnight, but it changed. The fiery captions and empowerment quotes gave way to longer, quieter posts, full of apologies and reflections. Sometimes the people you push away were the ones trying hardest to stay, but even the apologies couldn't fix the fallout. Brands stopped calling. Friends who used to hype her up grew silent. She tried to book new clients, but her name carried too much baggage. One by one, those doors closed. A few mutual friends told me she finally packed up her midtown apartment. Word was she moved back to Dallas to live with her parents, at least until she could rebuild. There's a part of me that still aches for the girl who used to dance around my kitchen in my t-shirt, singing into a wooden spoon. For the woman whose laugh could make me forget every problem in the world. But there's another part, the one that finally learned to breathe again, that knows we were never meant to last. Adrian. He vanished completely from Austin's social circles. Deleted. Most of his socials transferred to his company's Denver branch. Whatever he and Vanessa were, it clearly wasn't enough to survive the blast radius of that video. As for me, I stayed single for a while, focused on my job, worked late, took long runs through Lady Bird Lake trails. Some nights I'd sit on my balcony staring out at the skyline, wondering how two people who once fit so perfectly could turn into strangers so fast. But eventually, life kept moving. I met Emily through a mutual friend at a logistics conference. She's a senior accountant, steady and soft-spoken, with a wicked sense of humor and zero interest in social media drama. One night over drinks, I told her the whole story, every messy, painful detail. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You didn't fail, Ethan. You just loved someone who wasn't ready to love you back. I don't know what the future holds for me and Emily. I'm not rushing it. I'm learning that peace isn't boring. It's precious. Sometimes late at night, I'll catch myself wondering if Vanessa's okay, if she's found a way to quiet the chaos inside her. But then I remind myself, some people come into your life to show you exactly what you don't want to repeat. Vanessa taught me that independence and secrecy aren't the same thing, that love without respect is a ticking time bomb, and that letting go isn't failure, it's survival. If there's one truth I've carried out of this entire storm, it's that love and freedom aren't enemies. Real love doesn't clip your wings, but it also doesn't mean flying off in secret and expecting someone to keep the nest warm for you. We talk so much these days about independence, about living loud, about not letting anyone hold you back. And that's powerful. It's necessary. But sometimes, independence becomes a shield we hide behind because we're terrified of letting anyone see the messy parts of who we are. Vanessa wasn't a villain. She was someone who wanted to be strong, so badly that she forgot strength doesn't mean hurting the people who'd go to war for you. I learned that boundaries aren't cages. They're the walls that keep love standing when life tries to blow it apart. And any relationship worth fighting for respects those walls. Sometimes wanting to know where your partner is or who they're with isn't about control. It's about safety, loyalty, trust. Because trust isn't blind, it's built brick by brick, through choices, honesty, and showing up for each other even when it's hard. Vanessa taught me that appearances can lie, that a confident Instagram caption can hide someone who's terrified of being alone, that being fearless online doesn't mean you're fearless in real life. And I learned something about myself too. I'm not controlling because I want respect. I'm not insecure because I believe certain lines shouldn't be crossed in a relationship. Love isn't supposed to feel like a test you're constantly failing. It's supposed to feel like home, like a place you both build together brick by brick, where neither person has to sacrifice who they are to keep the other from leaving. So if you're out there listening and you're questioning whether you're asking for too much by wanting honesty or loyalty or simple respect, hear me now. You're not. And if someone calls you weak for wanting those things, maybe they're not ready for the kind of love you deserve. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from someone you love because you love yourself enough to know you can't stay. Independence isn't living life without anyone else. It's knowing that you'll still be whole, even if they leave. And sometimes the strongest move you'll ever make is choosing peace over proving you can handle someone who's determined to keep testing how much pain you're willing to take.